The first morning of the new semester was bright but quiet. A new professor named Mr. Harris walked slowly across the campus of a large city university. He had recently moved to the city, full of energy and hope for his new job. Mr. Harris had taught in small towns before, but this was his first time at a big university. Everything felt new, exciting, and a little overwhelming. He looked around at the tall buildings, the wide library, and the groups of students talking near the fountain. Everyone seemed busy with books, phones, or friends. Mr. Harris smiled because he always believed young people carried the future in their hands. He had come here not just to teach but also to learn more about life from the students. That evening, after finishing his first class, Mr. Harris decided to take a walk across the campus. The sun had already gone down, and most of the classrooms were empty. Street lights glowed softly across the pathways, and the library lights shone bright in the distance. As he walked, he heard a faint sound of paper turning. Curious, he followed the sound. Behind the old science building, there was a small bench in the shadow. There, under a tree, a young student was bent over a thick textbook. The boy had no lamp, no phone light, only a small flashlight in his hand. He was holding the book close to the light, reading carefully, as if every word was more precious than gold. Mr. Harris stopped and watched for a moment. He had seen many students rushing to finish assignments or chatting with friends, but rarely had he seen someone studying outside in the dark. He cleared his throat softly so the student would not be startled. The boy looked up, eyes wide, and quickly lowered the flashlight. "Good evening, Mr. Harris," said kindly. "My name is Mr. Harris. I am a new professor here. May I ask what you are doing out here in the dark?" The boy hesitated but then answered, "Good evening, sir. My name is Daniel. I was just trying to finish my reading for tomorrow's class." Mr. Harris glanced at the thick book and then at the small flashlight. He asked gently, "Why not study inside the library? It is still open, I believe." Daniel gave a small smile but shook his head. "I wish I could, sir. But I do not have a library card yet. The process takes time, and I cannot afford the extra fee right now. I did not want to waste my evening, so I came here with my flashlight." The professor felt a weight in his heart. He had assumed all students had easy access to the library and proper resources. This young man, however, was sitting alone outside, struggling just to read in the dark. "Do you live nearby?" Mr. Harris asked. Daniel lowered his eyes. "Not really, sir. I live in a small rented room across the city. The light there is not very strong, and sometimes there is no power at all. I do not want to fall behind in my studies, so I carry this flashlight. It helps me keep going." Mr. Harris was silent for a moment. The honesty in Daniel's voice touched him deeply. Here was a student with no excuses, no complaints, just determination to learn. He thought about the many times he had seen students with all the resources but little motivation. This boy was the opposite. "Daniel," Mr. Harris said softly, "you remind me of something my father once told me. He said true learning shines brightest in the darkest hours. I believe you have that light inside you." Daniel looked surprised. "Thank you, sir. I just want to do my best. My family back home is counting on me. They have given everything they could so I can study here. I do not want to disappoint them." The professor nodded slowly. He could see the fire of responsibility in the young man's eyes. This was not just about passing exams. For Daniel, education was a promise, a duty, and a dream. "Listen, Daniel," Mr. Harris said, "tomorrow meet me in my office. I will help you get a library card. And until then, if you need a quiet place to study, I can open one of my classrooms for you." Daniel's face brightened at once. His smile was wide but still respectful. "Really, sir? That would mean so much. Thank you. Mr. Harris felt warmth in his chest. This simple meeting under the tree had already taught him more about courage and dedication than any book could. He realized that this young man might change the way he looked at teaching. As he walked back to his apartment that night, Mr. Harris kept thinking about Daniel. The picture of the boy studying by flashlight stayed in his mind. It was a picture of struggle, but also of hope. He promised himself he would not let such determination go unnoticed. That night he wrote a note in his journal, "Today I met a student who reminded me why I became a teacher. His name is Daniel. He studies in the dark with a flashlight, but his spirit shines brighter than any lamp. I must do what I can to support him." Mr. Harris closed the journal and felt something change inside him. He did not know how, but he felt that meeting Daniel would not only change the boy's life, it would also change his own. The next morning the campus was alive with voices, footsteps, and the sound of bicycles rolling along the paths. Mr. Harris reached his office early, still thinking about the boy he had met the night before. He arranged his desk, placed his books neatly, and waited. A part of him wondered if Daniel would really come, but something in the boy's eyes had told him he could be trusted. At exactly 9 o'clock, there was a soft knock on the office door. Mr. Harris looked up and called, "Come in." The door opened slowly, and Daniel stepped inside, holding his notebook close to his chest. "Good morning, sir," Daniel said politely. "Good morning, Daniel," Mr. Harris replied with a smile. "Please, have a seat." Daniel sat down, his back straight and his eyes focused. Though he looked calm, Mr. Harris could sense the quiet pressure on his shoulders. "I thought about our meeting last night," Mr. Harris began. "You told me you want to do your best for your family. That is a strong reason, Daniel. I admire it. Now, I promised to help you, and I will." Daniel listened carefully, waiting for what the professor would say next. "First," Mr. Harris continued, "we will go together to the library this afternoon. I will speak with the staff, and we will make sure you get your card. Do not worry about the fee. I will cover it for you." Daniel's eyes widened. "Sir, I cannot let you spend money for me. You have already been too kind." Mr. Harris shook his head. "This is not charity, Daniel. It is an investment. I believe you will use the library well, and I trust you will one day help others in the same way. Think of it as a circle of kindness." Daniel lowered his head in gratitude. "Thank you, sir. I promise I will not waste it." "Second," the professor added, "I want you to know that my office will always be open for you. If you need a place to read or write, you may come here. No student of mine should struggle alone in the dark." For a moment, Daniel could not speak. His heart felt lighter, and he finally said, "You do not know what this means to me, sir. I was beginning to think no one cared how difficult it was." Mr. Harris leaned forward. "Many people care, Daniel. Sometimes they just do not see the struggle. I was lucky to see you under that tree. Now that I know, I cannot turn away." The rest of the day passed with quiet determination. In the afternoon, Mr. Harris walked with Daniel to the library. The tall glass doors opened, and the smell of books filled the air. Shelves stretched high, filled with knowledge from all over the world. The librarian at the desk greeted Mr. Harris with respect. When the professor explained Daniel's situation, she nodded kindly and said, "Of course, we can help. If Professor Harris vouches for him, then he is welcome." Papers were signed, and soon Daniel held a library card in his hand. His fingers trembled slightly as he looked at it, as though he had just been given a key to a treasure chest. "Now it is official," Mr. Harris said warmly. "This place is yours as much as anyone's." Daniel walked slowly through the aisles, running his hand across the spines of the books. Every shelf looked like a doorway to another world. He paused at the study tables, touched the smooth wood, and whispered, "I never thought I would sit here." "You will," Mr. Harris said. "And when you do, remember that you earned it through your hard work and determination." That evening, Daniel sat at one of the library tables for the first time. He opened his textbook and placed his small flashlight beside it, though he did not need it anymore. The bright library lamps shone above him, and for the first time, he read without fear of losing the light. Mr. Harris watched from a distance. He saw Daniel's steady focus, the way his hand moved across the page, the way his lips moved silently as he memorized each line. The professor felt proud, not only of helping but also of discovering a student with such fire inside. Later, as they walked out of the library together, Daniel spoke softly. "Sir, I want to tell you something. Last night, when you found me under the tree, I was very close to giving up. I had been thinking that maybe I could not handle this place. Everything felt too hard. But then you came, and everything changed." Mr. Harris stopped and looked at him. "Never think of giving up again, Daniel. Every student faces storms, but those who keep walking reach the light. You already proved that when you studied with only a flashlight. You have what it takes." Daniel smiled faintly. "I will remember that, sir." When Mr. Harris returned to his apartment that night, he sat down again with his journal. He wrote, "Today Daniel received his library card. I saw the joy in his eyes. It reminded me that the smallest opportunities can open the biggest doors. I must continue to guide him, not as just a student, but as someone who carries the hopes of many." As he closed the journal, the professor felt that his own journey as a teacher had just begun in a new way. He had made a promise to help Daniel, but deep inside, he sensed that Daniel might also be the one who would teach him lessons about courage, faith, and purpose. The weeks passed, and Daniel became a familiar face in the library. Every evening, after classes, he sat at the same corner table with his books spread neatly before him. Some students noticed his discipline and began to whisper, "That boy is always studying." Others ignored him, too busy with their own schedules. But Mr. Harris watched closely, and he saw more than just discipline. He saw a boy carrying a silent burden. One afternoon, Mr. Harris called Daniel to his office. The boy walked in, smiling as usual, but the professor noticed the tiredness in his eyes. "Daniel," Mr. Harris said gently, "you are working very hard. But tell me honestly, how are you managing your days? Do you have enough rest, enough food?" Daniel hesitated. He looked down at his hands. "I am fine, sir. I manage." The professor leaned forward. "I ask because I care, Daniel. You do not need to hide the truth from me." After a long pause, Daniel finally spoke. "Sir, to be honest, things are not easy. I work part-time at a small shop late at night. It helps me pay for my room and food. After work, I come back and study as much as I can. Sometimes I sleep only a few hours. But I must do this. Otherwise, I cannot stay in the city." Mr. Harris felt a sting in his chest. He imagined Daniel, working long hours, then forcing his tired eyes to read. It explained the dark circles under the boy's eyes and the quiet way he sometimes moved through the day. "Daniel," the professor said firmly, "you should not carry all this alone. Why did you not tell me earlier?" Daniel shook his head. "Sir, I did not want to trouble you. Everyone has their own problems. I thought if I worked harder, I could manage." Mr. Harris sighed. "Hard work is important, yes. But no one grows alone. Even the strongest tree needs water and sunlight. You need support, Daniel, not silence." The boy listened quietly. He had always believed he must fight alone, but the professor's words felt true. Still, he did not know how to accept help without feeling weak. That weekend, Mr. Harris decided to see for himself where Daniel lived. Without telling him, he walked through the narrow streets until he found the small building Daniel had described. It was an old structure with peeling paint and broken windows. Inside, the rooms were cramped and dim. When he reached Daniel's room, he knocked gently. Daniel opened the door, surprised to see his professor. "Sir, what are you doing here?" "I came to see how you are living," Mr. Harris said calmly. Daniel stepped aside, embarrassed. The room was small, with a thin mattress on the floor, one chair, and a table with a flickering lamp. A few books were stacked neatly in the corner. "This is where you rest after working late?" Mr. Harris asked softly. Daniel nodded. "It is not much, but it is all I can afford. I do not mind. It reminds me of home in a way. Simple, but enough." Mr. Harris walked around the small space. His heart grew heavy, but at the same time, he admired the boy even more. Here was a student living with almost nothing, yet carrying himself with dignity and hope. "Daniel," the professor said firmly, "I cannot allow you to keep living like this without support. You are doing everything you can, but you need more stability if you are to succeed in your studies." Daniel shook his head quickly. "Sir, please, I do not want special treatment. I want to earn everything by myself." Mr. Harris looked at him with steady eyes. "And you are earning it. No one can deny your effort. But sometimes accepting help is also a sign of strength. Think of your family. They sent you here with hope. Do you think they would want you to break yourself down out of pride?" Those words struck deep. Daniel stood silent, realizing the truth. His family had indeed sacrificed much for him. If he fell, their dream would fall too. "Sir," Daniel said quietly, "what should I do?" Mr. Harris placed a hand on his shoulder. "For now, focus on your studies. I will speak with some colleagues about a scholarship fund. And I will find a way to reduce your work hours so you can rest more. You have already proven your worth. Now let others invest in your future." Tears filled Daniel's eyes, but he blinked them away. "Thank you, sir. I do not know how to repay you." "You will repay me by becoming the man you are meant to be," Mr. Harris said firmly. That night, as Daniel sat in his small room, he thought about the professor's words. For the first time in a long while, he allowed himself to believe that maybe he was not alone. Maybe someone truly cared about his success, not just his grades. Meanwhile, Mr. Harris returned home and opened his journal once again. He wrote, "Today I saw Daniel's room. I saw his struggle with my own eyes. He is stronger than most students I have ever met. But strength should not mean suffering alone. I will do everything I can to lift some weight from his shoulders. Because if Daniel rises, many others will rise through him." The night outside was quiet, but in both hearts, the professors and the students, a new bond was forming. It was more than a bond of teacher and student. It was the bond of hope and responsibility, one life touching another in a way that could not be forgotten. The following week, Mr. Harris moved with quiet determination. He had seen Daniel's small room, and the picture would not leave his mind. Every night he thought of the boy studying under weak light, carrying the weight of both work and studies. The professor knew that Daniel had the strength to continue, but strength alone would not be enough. A door had to be opened for him. On Monday morning, Mr. Harris attended a faculty meeting. Professors gathered around a long table, speaking about lessons, exams, and projects. When his turn came to speak, Mr. Harris shared Daniel's story, though he kept the boy's name private. "There is a student here who studies harder than anyone I have met," he said. "He works late nights to survive, yet still spends every free hour in the library. His dedication is remarkable, but he faces challenges no student should face alone. I believe we, as teachers, have a duty to help." Some professors nodded, while others looked uncertain. One older professor spoke, "Many students face hardship. We cannot help them all. Mr. Harris replied calmly, that may be true, but when we see a spark worth protecting, should we not act? One student's success can inspire many more. Helping even one life can change countless others. The room fell silent for a moment. Then the head of the faculty, Dr. Collins, spoke. There is a small scholarship fund for cases like this. If you vouch for the student's commitment, Mr. Harris, we can nominate him. He will need to submit an essay and meet with the board. Mr. Harris felt relief. This was the chance Daniel needed. Thank you, he said with gratitude. That evening, he called Daniel to his office. The boy arrived quickly, his book still under his arm. Daniel, the professor said, I have some news for you. There is a scholarship you can apply for. If you succeed, it will cover your living costs and part of your studies. You would not need to work such long hours at the shop. Daniel's eyes grew wide. He sat down slowly, almost as if the chair had become too heavy. A scholarship? Sir, are you serious? Yes, Mr. Harris replied. But you must earn it. You will need to write an essay about your goals, your struggles, and what education means to you. Then you will meet the board and speak honestly. I know you can do this. Daniel's hands trembled slightly. I have never written something like that before. What if I fail? Mr. Harris leaned forward. Failure is not in trying, Daniel. It is only in giving up. You have lived this story. All you need to do is put it into words. Speak from your heart, and they will hear your truth. Daniel nodded slowly, determination returning to his eyes. I will try, sir. I will give it everything. Over the next few days, Daniel worked on the essay in the library. He wrote late into the evening, filling page after page. At times he grew frustrated, erasing lines again and again, but Mr. Harris guided him patiently. Do not worry about perfect words, the professor said. Focus on honesty. Tell them who you are, where you come from, and why you refuse to stop learning. So Daniel wrote about his family, who sold their few belongings to send him to the city. He wrote about the nights he studied by flashlight under a tree. He wrote about the dream of becoming a teacher himself one day, so he could lift others the way education was lifting him. When the essay was finally complete, Daniel read it aloud to Mr. Harris. His voice shook at first, but then grew steady. By the time he finished, both of them sat in silence. The professor's eyes glistened. You have written more than an essay, Mr. Harris said softly. You have written your soul on paper. This will touch them. The day of the meeting with the board arrived. Daniel dressed in his cleanest shirt, the one his mother had given him before he left home. His shoes were worn, but he polished them until they shone. He walked into the office with steady steps, though his heart beat fast. The board members asked him questions. Why do you want this scholarship? How will you use it? What does education mean to you? Daniel answered with honesty. He spoke about his late-night work, his struggles, and his hope to give back to his community one day. His words were simple, but his sincerity filled the room. When the meeting ended, the board members thanked him and told him they would decide soon. Daniel walked out feeling both relieved and nervous. That evening, Mr. Harris met him near the fountain. How did it go? He asked. Daniel sighed. I told them everything, sir. I do not know if it is enough, but I did not hide anything. Mr. Harris smiled. That is all that matters. Truth has a power stronger than any fancy speech. Now, let us wait. As Daniel walked back to his small room, he felt a strange calmness. For once, he had not hidden his struggle. He had spoken openly about his journey. Whatever the result, he knew he had given his best. And far away, in the office of the board, the members sat quietly, reading Daniel's essay again. One of them said, This boy carries more courage than many who have far more comfort. We cannot let him slip away. The days after Daniel's interview felt longer than usual. Each morning he went to class, each evening he sat in the library, but in his heart there was always a question. Would the scholarship be his? Or would he return to his late-night shifts and long, tired hours? Mr. Harris noticed the worry in Daniel's eyes. He would sometimes pause by his table in the library and whisper, "Patience, Daniel. You have done your part. Let the result come." Daniel nodded each time, but the waiting was hard. At night, lying on his thin mattress, he thought of his family back home. His mother's tired face came to his mind, and his father's hands, rough from labor. They had sent him here with all their hope. He wanted to call them with good news, not disappointment. Finally, one bright morning, as students filled the campus with their chatter, Daniel was called to the office of Dr. Collins, the head of the faculty. He walked there with slow steps, his heart beating fast. When he entered, he saw Mr. Harris already standing in the room, his face calm but expectant. Dr. Collins smiled and said, "Daniel, thank you for coming. We have reviewed your essay and interview. The board was deeply moved by your honesty, your determination, and your dream of giving back. It is my pleasure to inform you that you have been awarded the scholarship." For a moment, Daniel could not move. The words felt unreal. He stared at Dr. Collins, then at Mr. Harris, and finally whispered, I got it." "Yes," Dr. Collins replied warmly. "Your living expenses will be covered, and part of your studies as well. We expect you to continue working hard, but now you can focus more on learning and less on survival." Daniel's knees felt weak, but his heart soared. He bowed his head deeply and said, "Thank you, sir. Thank you with all my heart. I will not waste this chance." As he stepped out of the office, Mr. Harris walked beside him. The boy's face shone with joy, and the professor felt as if the sun itself had broken through the clouds. "See, Daniel," Mr. Harris said, "truth and effort always find a way. I told you that you had what it takes." Daniel nodded, still smiling. "You were right, sir. This is not only my victory. It is yours too. Without you, I would still be under that tree with my flashlight." Mr. Harris placed a hand on his shoulder. "Remember this moment, Daniel. One day, when you see another young person struggling, you must do for them what was done for you. That is how hope continues." The news spread quickly among students and teachers. Some congratulated Daniel, while others whispered, "That's the boy who works so hard." Suddenly, people who had never noticed him before began to see him differently. But Daniel did not let pride rise in his heart. He remained humble, spending his evenings in the library just as before, though now his eyes looked less tired and his shoulders less heavy. With the scholarship, Daniel no longer needed to work long nights at the shop. He kept a small part-time shift only on weekends to stay responsible, but most of his energy now went to his studies. His grades improved quickly, and professors praised his sharp mind. One evening, as he sat in the library, Daniel took out a letter he had written to his parents. The words were simple: "I have received a scholarship. You do not need to worry about me now. Your sacrifice is giving me wings. One day, I will return and make you proud." He sealed the letter with care, knowing it would bring tears of relief to his mother's eyes. Meanwhile, Mr. Harris continued to guide him. The professor gave him extra reading, encouraged him to join discussions, and even invited him to small gatherings with other teachers. Daniel felt shy at first, but he listened carefully, learning not only from books but also from conversations with educated minds. One evening after such a gathering, Mr. Harris said, "Daniel, knowledge is not only in books. It is also in people, in stories, in experiences. You must open your ears and heart to all of it." Daniel nodded, understanding more each day that education was larger than he had imagined. As weeks turned into months, Daniel grew in confidence. His classmates began asking him for help with lessons, and he never refused. He remembered his promise to give back, and he started right there in the library, explaining chapters to anyone who asked. Mr. Harris often watched from a distance, pride swelling in his chest. He thought, this boy is becoming more than a student. He is becoming a light for others. But deep inside, the professor also knew that life would not always be smooth. The scholarship was a blessing, but challenges would come again, as they always did. Still, he trusted Daniel's spirit. The boy who once studied by flashlight had now found a brighter lamp, and he would carry it forward with strength. That night, Mr. Harris wrote in his journal, "Today Daniel received his scholarship. I saw joy in his eyes that I will never forget. This is only the beginning. His journey will be long, but I believe he will walk it with courage. And I will walk beside him, as long as I can." The city outside was alive with noise, but in Daniel's small room, there was peace. He lay on his mattress, no longer worried about unpaid bills or missed hours of sleep. For the first time in many months, he closed his eyes with ease, whispering a prayer of thanks. The boy who once feared losing light had now found it. And the professor who once came as a stranger had now become a guide. Together, their story was only just beginning. Life began to feel brighter for Daniel after the scholarship. He no longer rushed from class to late-night work every day. He spent more time in the library, asked more questions in class, and even began tutoring classmates who struggled with lessons. His teachers admired his progress, and his friends respected his kindness. But success often brings new tests. One afternoon, while Daniel was leaving the library, a few students approached him. They were from wealthy families, dressed neatly, speaking with confident voices. One of them said, "So you are the boy who got the scholarship? We heard you told some sad story about working nights and living in a tiny room. Clever way to get money." Daniel froze. He felt the words hit him harder than expected. "It was not a story," he said quietly. "It was my life." The students laughed softly. "Everyone has problems. You just made yours bigger so the professors would feel sorry for you. That is why you got help. Some of us study just as hard but no one gives us anything." Daniel wanted to defend himself, but the words stuck in his throat. He walked away in silence, his heart heavy. That evening, when Mr. Harris saw him, he noticed the change in his face. "Daniel, something is troubling you. Tell me." Daniel hesitated, then shared what had happened. "Sir, some students think I do not deserve this scholarship. They say I got pity, not respect. What if they are right? What if I was chosen not because of my ability, but because of my struggle?" Mr. Harris listened carefully, then spoke firmly. "Daniel, listen to me. Scholarships are not given for pity. They are given for potential. The board saw your determination, your truth, and your dreams. You earned it. Do not let careless words shake your faith." Daniel nodded, though the doubt still lingered inside him. A few weeks later, another challenge came. Exams were approaching, and the pressure on all students was heavy. Daniel studied harder than ever, but one subject, advanced mathematics, seemed impossible. No matter how many hours he gave, the formulas twisted in his mind. One night in the library, frustrated, he closed his book and buried his face in his hands. Mr. Harris, who happened to pass by, sat down beside him. "Tired?" the professor asked. "Very tired, sir," Daniel admitted. "I understand so much, but this one subject feels like a wall I cannot climb. What if I fail?" Mr. Harris smiled gently. "Every strong climber meets a wall. Some climb alone, others ask for help. Which one will you choose?" Daniel looked up slowly. "Help, sir. But who will help me?" The professor nodded. "I know a senior student who is excellent in mathematics. I will ask him to guide you. Remember, asking for help does not mean weakness. It means wisdom." From the next day, Daniel met with the senior student. At first, the lessons were difficult, but slowly the fog began to clear. Each formula started making sense, each problem looked less frightening. For the first time, Daniel felt hope in the subject he had once feared. As exam week came, he still felt nervous, but now there was also confidence. On the day of the mathematics exam, Daniel sat with steady hands. He worked through the problems one by one, his mind recalling the late nights of practice. When he left the hall, he felt relief wash over him. Results were announced 2 weeks later. Daniel passed every subject, including mathematics. His score was not the highest, but it was strong. For him, it was more than a number, it was proof that he could overcome fear. When he met Mr. Harris, the professor smiled widely. "I knew you could do it, Daniel. Do you see now? You do not stand here because of pity. You stand here because you refuse to give up." Daniel bowed his head in gratitude. "Thank you, sir. You always remind me of the truth when I forget it." But trials did not end there. That same week, Daniel received a letter from home. His younger sister had fallen sick, and the family had spent most of their small savings on her treatment. Though she was recovering, money was short again. Daniel read the letter again and again. His heart ached. He wanted to send money, but he had none to spare. For a moment, old fear returned, the fear of not being able to help those who depended on him. When he told Mr. Harris about it, the professor placed a hand on his shoulder. "Daniel, this is another test. You cannot solve everything at once, but you can stand strong. Your education is not only for you, it is for your family too. Finish what you started here, and you will give them more than money. You will give them hope for a better future." Daniel took a deep breath. He knew the professor was right. He could not go back home yet, but he could keep moving forward. That night, as he sat in the library again, Daniel whispered to himself, "No matter what comes, I will not stop. My family believes in me. My professor believes in me. I must believe in myself." And so the boy who once studied by flashlight continued his journey, now facing trials not only of poverty but of doubt, pressure, and responsibility. Each trial hurt, but each trial also made him stronger. Months passed quickly, and the semester came to an end. Daniel had grown not only as a student but also as a person. His quiet strength, once hidden in the dark, now shone in his confidence and actions. He was no longer the boy struggling under a tree with a flashlight. He was a young man others looked up to. The day of the scholarship ceremony arrived. Every year, the university held an event to honor students who had shown excellence or great effort. Daniel was among those called to stand on the stage. He wore his simple shirt and polished shoes, the same ones he had worn to his first interview. His hands shook a little as he held the certificate, but his eyes were steady. Dr. Collins, the head of the faculty, spoke to the crowd. "This scholarship is not only about grades. It is about spirit, honesty, and the will to rise despite struggle. Today, we honor a student who once studied outside by flashlight because he would not let darkness stop him. Today, he reminds us all that true light comes from within." The audience clapped loudly as Daniel bowed his head. For a moment, he remembered that first night under the tree, and how lonely he had felt. Now he stood before hundreds of people, not because he had more than others, but because he had refused to give up. After the ceremony, many students came to him. Some asked for advice, others simply said, "You inspire us." Daniel listened with humility, answering softly, "If I can do it, you can too." Later, Mr. Harris found him standing alone near the fountain. The professor's eyes were full of pride. "Daniel, you have come far. Do you realize what you have done?" Daniel smiled faintly. "I only studied, sir. That is all." Mr. Harris shook his head. "No, you did more. You carried your pain with dignity, and you turned it into strength. Now, others see you, and they will believe in themselves because of you. That is a greater lesson than any book can give." Daniel felt a warmth in his chest. "If I have done anything good, sir, it is because you believed in me when no one else did." The professor placed a hand on his shoulder. "And one day, Daniel, you will do the same for someone else. That is how light spreads." The following weeks brought even more change. Daniel began volunteering at a small community center near the campus. There, children from poor families came after school to learn and read. The first day he entered the small classroom, the children looked at him curiously. He picked up a book, sat with them on the floor, and began to teach. At first, the children were shy. But soon, they gathered around him, asking questions, laughing when he explained lessons in simple ways. They loved listening to the young man who spoke with patience and kindness. One evening, after finishing a lesson with the children, Daniel walked out of the center and saw Mr. Harris waiting by the gate. The professor had been watching quietly. "You see, Daniel," he said, "already you are passing on what you learned. This is how change begins. Not in grand speeches, but in small rooms where hope is planted in young hearts." Daniel nodded, smiling with quiet joy. "It feels right, sir. When I look at those children, I see myself. I see how a little help can change everything." As the new semester approached, Daniel wrote another letter to his parents. This time his words were filled with hope. "I am doing well. I passed all my exams. I even help younger children with their studies now. Do not worry about me. Your son is stronger than before." His mother later told him through a phone call, "Your letter made us cry, but with happiness. We always knew you would shine. Keep going, my son. We are proud of you." That night, Daniel sat by his window, looking at the city lights. He remembered every step of his journey: the dark nights of work, the lonely hours with a flashlight, the first meeting with Mr. Harris, the scholarship, and now the chance to give back. Each memory was a reminder that pain and hope often walk side by side. Mr. Harris, too, sat in his apartment writing in his journal. His final words on Daniel's story were simple: "A professor teaches many lessons, but sometimes it is the student who teaches the greatest one. Daniel has shown me that education is not only about knowledge. It is about courage, kindness, and lifting others. He came with a flashlight, and now he shines like the sun." As time moved on, Daniel continued his studies with determination. He dreamed of becoming a teacher one day, just like the professor who had believed in him. He knew his journey was far from over, but he also knew he would never walk it alone. The boy who once fought the darkness had become a light for others. And the man who once stopped by a bench under a tree had discovered that sometimes the smallest meeting can change two lives forever.